How's it going, everybody? Going to be taking a look at some of the cards from the Eisen Gen Con demo decks, the preview decks that they had for the new 7th C City of 5 sales game. And Eisen's my favorite faction, so we're going to take a look at that one first. This might turn into a little bit of a long video just because I want to give you my thoughts and ideas around some of these cards, and hopefully they'll kind of also let you know kind of how the game plays. So right now we're taking a look at the leader, Caspar. He is, a beast of a leader. He's, as you can see in the big red circle there, he's got 9 health, so he could take quite a bit of punishment, even potentially intervening to save your crew. Now, what that is going to mean is that when people are challenging your crew, if he is there, he can step in the way and take the duel himself. He'll suffer some wounds. And after, a couple rounds in the duel, you could play cards to essentially just kind of stop the duel, take the wounds, and you've protected your characters so that you can do what you need them to do. A lot of people probably aren't going to initially think about using their leader that way, but I believe Caspar can do that for you. He has a 6-card hand size, or panache is what it's called in this game. So in a 5-day game, so basically 5 full revolutions of gameplay, you'll see at least 30 of your 40 cards. That gives you plenty of room to gamble with in duels. Don't be afraid to gamble in duels. He's also going to have 2 influence. He has 4 when recruiting mercenaries. So he could pretty much outright recruit all but 5 of the city deck mercenaries. 3 of the others would cost him only 1, and the last 2 would only cost 2. So he's really good right now at getting mercenaries out on the field. Over on your side, and more mercenaries, more bodies means more actions, and the game is all about action economy right now. He has a city action that allows him to basically summon a mercenary that he can recruit immediately. It kind of feels like 2 actions in one. It's a really good ability. I'm pretty sure they're going to be toning him down. Just because right now he feels to be really good. He's very versatile. He can pressure the board. He can protect his crew. And if he doesn't have to do any of that, he just builds his crew. So now we're going to take a look at some of our other characters. Here we have Otto Straight. He's going to be one of your characters in your deck. You get to create a deck of schemes and characters. Each day you get to choose one. So you kind of had to time when you want characters to come out at certain times of day. I've picked Otto as like my main early character. He's really good early game. He's not a great combatant by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, he can hold his own, but coupled with your leader Caspar, who will act as an intervener or protector for Otto, the pair of them can recruit just a goodly amount early game to ramp up your action count. Even with 4 health, he doesn't need a defense early game, really. He can take a few hits in an early duel. Late game, he'd probably be ditched to your crew size cap anyway. He's just got a lot of really good abilities here. Now we have Terrell Brandt. I've picked Terrell Brandt as a midday, a mid character. He's a great day 2 choice, but you want him out as early as possible. So probably no later than day 3. Duels with Terrell can get deadly with his 3 combats. His extra thrust, it's just heavy. However, the thing that draws my eye is his knack for getting attachments back to his hand from the dueling line, coupled with his 2 finesse. Your deck right now has 14 attachments in it. The odds of having 1 in your opening hand of 6, it's pretty high, but almost guaranteed to have 1 or 2 on day 2 when you've seen 12 of your deck's cards. Those attachments with Terrell are free duel cards, basically. Your opponent can spend cards as well, but after the duel, their hand is going to start getting depleted, and you still have buying power when those attachments go back to your hand, because then you can either attach them or you can pitch them to buy things or recruit people. 5 health means he can judiciously battle a couple of times or aggressively where needed. Now that finesse, don't forget that. A value of 2 means you can gamble twice, and that means looking at 4 cards from your deck, and if those are attachments, just extra value. The value skyrockets from gambling. Now, Philip here, Philip Hayes, another good mid character. So bring him out, middle of the game. This guy pairs great with Terrell to come out the day after when you have attachments in your hand, or the day before so Terrell can reload your hand with attachments. You want a day or two before you can bring him out so you have some mercs to spread around to make use of his technique. Don't wait long on him though, as with 5 days in the game, you want as many free wounds as possible. 5 health and 3 combat make for a threatening dueler. But the one finesse means he won't be gambling a bunch. But don't worry, that's what you have Terrell for. Daniela here, another mid pick for me. Great midday character, though potentially a day one character depending on the matchup. The power, she's just slippery. She's a slippery customer. Um, but the power comes in her action economy and survivability. Granting a merc at her location a challenge without engaging is nice, assuming your merc survives to make use of not being engaged. The technique she offers is essentially a get out of dodge ability, sending threat over, then moving away to not receive any threat coming back, forcing the enemy to either eat the damage or spend cards to mitigate the damage. Either one's a win win for you, you know. A combat of two doesn't make for much damage, but as a manipulator on the field who can enhance your action economy and survive to keep your crew count up, it's just worth having. Her actual threat level, though, I feel comes from ability, uh, party support. So will most likely be a day three or later choice. Uwe Zimmerman, he's my late game choice. Bring him out day five. Not the most stellar of characters you can choose from, with a modest trait of counting as a merc, only working really with Daniela and the card answering the call. You're relying on him just being another body on the field. Even his added thrust against sorcerers isn't going to proc very often, given there's only two in the current city deck. Maybe if deck arises in whatever evolving meta is created that revolves around sorcerers, his fame will probably grow. But for now, he's basically a 5 health body with 3 combat. Not something you desperately need, but late game on the final day or even the penultimate day, and you're short on crew cap, he'll do. He's a cudgel. So on the other side, along with the characters, you also have your schemes. And let's haggle. Of the two schemes in the Eisen deck that are not game state dependent, Let's Haggle is perhaps the best one to lead off with. It gets some renown on the field to fight over, places an extra attachment on the field, sets up the Bazaar for contention, and lets you potentially snag an easy attachment. You basically get the full effect of the card. You know what you're getting into day one. Now you have Parlay gone wrong. I would say day two or three. You should have a good base of characters and attachments to start tossing out some scary duels, and will more than likely have a good sized crew to toss out challenges as needed. The restriction of intervening will go well with your challenges. The extra card from the Panache increase is good for one of these midday plays as well, because later in the game, day five, you'll probably be out of cards from gambling in duels, as much as I recommend, particularly with some of your characters. So you won't be able to really potentially take advantage of that extra card if you try and bring this out like day five. Armed and marshaled, my day three pick preferably, but it's movable based on whatever matchup you're going up against. After your duels or character deaths, there should be an attachment to get back with this card, which essentially acts like an extra card draw. Hopefully, Terrell is still in your crew or coming out to make use of his ability as well in conjunction with this. The city action provided is a powerful effect. It can decide who controls which location. This is Eisen's fastest initiative, so don't waste it. The Song of Eisen, a good mid to late game scheme. You need city mercs in the discard to make use of it. Caspar doesn't really need the influence boost for recruiting, so it's not a very beneficial card. The extra renown you get from it is a sneaky way to egg out a win later in the game. And one of your opponent has to be mindful of later in the game. Do they hesitate on recruiting to potentially deny you the renown? It's a lot to think about. Finally, for schemers filling the ranks, it's basically a last ditch effort of a card, and one I select pretty much always being day 5. Eisen appears to be really good at recruiting right now, and the odds of being lower in character count, it seems pretty low. Just probabilities and possibilities. So if you are, things are really bad. If you're not, you're doing all right. The benefit of this card being last is it holds the second highest initiative for the Eisen deck right now, with only Armed and Marshalled beating it out for speed. I mean, that's basically what you're using it for. It's a last ditch effort card on day 5. Now we start moving into the deck proper. We've got some attachments here, and they are going to be very relevant to a lot of the cards you have and the actions you have. First up, we have Caspar's Panzer Hand. It's an absolutely insane item, in my opinion, even with a cost of 2. That means you have to pitch 2 cards from your hands to play this, so your hand is losing 3 cards, this and the 2 from the cost. I mean, even with a cost of 2, if all it gave you was the ability to cancel a technique, it would be gold. Counter abilities in any game are great. It also gives you an extra health and a technique, and breaks the rule of one of each unique equipment type. Each equipment type. Not to mention, you already have a faction character that basically can give it double duty with Terrell. I mean, you can use it in a duel and then get it back. It's just amazing. The scheme, Armed and Marshaled, helps get it back later in the game if necessary as well. I mean, this thing is going to stick around, it's going to do work. It's just trying to find it, which you have a lot of ways to get to it. Terrible gambling, help cycling through your deck, trying to find this thing. Its weakness, like I say, is it's unique, so only one in the deck. But as mentioned, Terrell can help seek it out with your other items. Dark Gift, I love the allure of this card, but I feel there should be more of a dark side to it. Eisen typically reject and hunt down such dark magic users and dark abilities. The card itself is amazing. For 1 cost, you get extra actions and non-engaging movement, as well as healing, though not usually in the same day. Solid dual line stat. Downside is the unique trait, pretty much just like the Panzer Hands. I just wish there was something else on the card that I guess kind of wanted you to double think about running it. Right now, sure, run it. There should be some sort of narrative or some sort of aspect to it that, do I really want to use this? The longsword or Longschwert. This weapon is hard to judge for me. I understand the desire to put a higher thrust score on it, because they are long, thin blades, and at one point they were, used for thrusting. But my understanding of the German longsword, which this is kind of modeled heavily after, especially the whole Eisen culture, I guess. At least that's my take on it. It's more of a parry and cut weapon. With many of the guards used flowing into slicing, doubling, slinging, and various other techniques. Especially if you look at some of the most major German longsword dueling techniques, instructions, books, guides. Thrusting feels more of a rapier or foil move. I would actually move those dual track numbers up a space each and change the technique to parry instead of thrust. Not a mechanic choice, mind you, purely to represent the weapon more accurately as I understand the weapon and how it's typically used. The polished flintlock, similar to the Langschwert, I would move these dual track numbers down a spot each, giving this a good thrust, a dual track number, and just a dash of riposte. Mechanically, I'm not sure yet how that would change things, but it would feel more accurate for a one-shot flintlock. As for the ability, It feels like you get your value for a two cost attachment. The finesse increase lets you gamble one more time, and you gain a wounding ability or the option for lethal, which is just an amazing keyword that allows you to ignore the restricted hostilities. So it doesn't matter what your combat score is. If you can get the threat over there on your opponent, all that threat could become wounds. I mean, it's just great. Breastplate. I'm not sure what the discarding mechanic is meant to represent. If my duelist suffers a cut on the arm, their breastplate crumbles to dust, even if both duelists walk away from the duel. I'm just having a hard time wrapping my mind around that from a thematic standpoint. I'm not sure why it has a thrust value for the dual track, but for one cost, it could potentially save you a damage or two, given how rare healing appears to be in the game. It's not my favorite item, but it's not the worst. Improvised weapon. Well, the art, it's hilarious. I'd rather see, a picture or a shot of a chair being broken over someone. That would feel like to capture what is going on with the card. Better just capture the restriction that when it wounds, it's destroyed. Mechanically, I'm not sure where an item that reduces your combat provides such a good thrust technique. The dual track bonuses seem fine though. All in all, not a bad zero cost attachment. I just think the flavor of it needs to be zeroed in. Just dial it in a little bit better. Throwing knife, amazing dual track stats to use. This weapon, if the artwork is to be believed, isn't quite as strong as a fish from the improvised weapon. Improvised weapon gives you +2 thrust as a technique, and you get it until you actually wound, while throwing knife only gives you +1 thrust and goes away for that one use, not even guaranteeing that you do wound. It's a toss up, but I'd be interested in more testing. However, I'm not entirely sold on this item. Just looking at the cards available, I'd like something a bit better. Maybe if used to pay for recruitment or attach it to a merc that you have recruited, it seems more of a throwaway card. Again, improvised weapon, which is a dude holding a fish. That fish is apparently better than an actual throwing knife. That's some fish. Matchlock musket. It seems to push all the right buttons. It can attack folks at a distance. Has a great thrust to dual line stat. For one cost to put into play, this is an amazing weapon. And now we get into the rest of the deck. We have some risks here. First up is a new strategy. I almost think that this card should be unique. The ability to draw cards is game winning in any card game. This cost is a renown, so you're backpedaling on a victory condition to draw cards, but it feels a solid change off. The dual line stats aren't bad, coupled with it. You only get one in the demo deck, so it acts essentially as a unique for now. I know that trick. A solid set of dual stats. It can be quite versatile given the breadth of techniques one is likely to face in a tournament. Testing will tell out exactly how well this performs, but it's a solid card. Not today. This is one of those cards you look at and you just know. As it is right now, this will be in every deck, max quantity. No cost, practically negates all threat and gets your participant out of danger. It basically ends the duel when you need it to. Get in the hits you want, and then scram. The entire game is based around dueling in the streets at various locations, so being able to control those duels is a powerful ability. If I was a playtester, I would like to see some form of tighter restriction on this card, maybe the cost of a renown, because we've already seen that on other cards. The downside, though, is if the duel hasn't gotten too out of hand, you could just not play anything, suffer a wound or two, and the duel ends with your character still in play. The key thing this helps against is lethal duels. Triage. I'm confused why it has a thrust score so high. I'm pretty sure there's some design concept out there for that. The ability is nice, but the cost of one makes this seem a bit steep for what you get, because don't forget you're playing this card, and you have to pitch a card to that one cost. So you're losing two cards from your hand, and let's just take our Eisen leader of having six cards in hand. That's 33% of your hand right there just to get this one effect. Um, Bear in mind, unless this targets a hero or scoundrel, I'd actually like to see something a bit more thematic. The cost reduction shouldn't matter who it is targeting, but where. It should cost zero if the target is at home, but cost more if in a city location. Harder to get to a trusted healer, out there in the streets, you're not sure who to go to. But if you're at home base, yeah, your doctor should be able to patch up really easy. You'd basically be swapping, control of the city. So, all right, you all, my opponent, can go out there. You get control of city locations. I'm going to take a few turns to heal for free at home. Or go out there with your normal action and contend them and then heal on the fly. It just costs you a little bit more. Regroup, for a cost of one, you have a movement effect that allows your character to stay on guard. In the end, it uses two cards, the card itself and one for the cost, so its use has to be dire. But in the end, it boils down to if the action economy is a worthy trade off for the hand cost. The maneuver is also pretty nice. Move along. This is just an amazing card. Some might consider this a bully duel card, forcing your opponent, to send home. In which case, why not just duel and win? This card, however, removes a threat for a lower cost. Hear me out. If you duel, consider the damage you'll take and the cards you'll spend for effect and damage. For the cost of two cards, this card and one to pay for the cost, you remove a threat for the time being. I shouldn't also have to mention how devastating a bad thrust could be. Last word, I'm not sold on this card. For a zero drop, you can remove a threat, but only if you have a ranged weapon. This pre-con demo deck comes with a few, so that's not much of a worry right now. I feel the maneuver is the more important part of this card, getting an automatic wound in during a duel. This card also seems to be an easy drop to satisfy costs, especially if you won't have a ranged weapon. Just pitch this to pay for the cost of something. Well equipped. The ability to ready one of your characters is insanely huge. In practically any and every game that I've ever played, getting one of your characters back into the thick of things is just solid. It's amazing. The maneuver is just rock solid, but being able to later in the day suddenly getting a ready character will be a huge shock for your opponent. Repost 2 is just icing on the cake here. Press the advantage. This card is all about control, either in the city or during a duel. It either leans into presence control, which this deck has a fair bit of, or it makes the opponent in a duel really suffer thanks to that maneuver. Just a great card. Stratege, not much to say about this card that has been mentioned about, others that we've already seen. Movement that doesn't turn your character sideways is always welcome, especially in later rounds when you need every available action and opportunity to engage. No maneuver is made up for by, it's just a good thrust score and a really solid parry. Fight through the pain. This deck just has loads of attachments, so getting the heal is nice, especially if you intervene with your leader to protect your daily characters. It doesn't give you any threat reduction unless you have a wound already. And even then, it's only minor, but the thrust score of 5, that's a big threat. Just make sure you have lethal so it all sticks, such as using your polished flintlock. Precision. This card escalates duels and tries to end them quick. It costs 2 cards though, this card itself, and you have to pitch one for the cost. So it's weighty on your hand economy. However, you're only going to be dropping this in a duel that you really want to win. If it were a zero drop, it'd be way too good. It needs that one cost. Answering the call. I love the jank that this card offers. It can combo well with what the deck already does, but offers room for growth as expansions get released and the card pool begins to expand. The core way to increase your action economy is recruiting mercenaries, and this card turns them into extra wounds for your key characters. The solid thrust keeps the threat moving around, and while one would expect to suffer some wounds, don't forget about that merc beside your character, that this thing just turns into, extra hit points. And now Iron Reply, strictly a duel card. This is one of the main techniques of the Eisen, and honestly, I was expecting a touch more out of it. More testing will probably determine if the restrictions are worth it. I don't know, maybe the designers could create a keyword for faction fighting styles like this that, if gambled, go to the hand at the end of the duel. Even that might not save this. I just feel it's just not impactful enough, I feel. But I might not have had the right experiences with it so far. And it's just kind of lackluster, particularly for the cost and the restrictions involved. And there we go. I believe that covers everything. My opinions, thoughts, ideas about the Eisen deck from the 7th C City of Five Sails Gen Con demo decks. Obviously, because of the tournament results there, those will change. Also, bear in mind, I'm pretty sure the playtesters will still have some feedback. They're still going to be going through everything. Join the Discord, join the Facebook, get your voice heard, delve into this rich game. It really captures the feel of moving around a city, duels breaking out, intrigue, combat. Hop in, it's a load of fun. Thanks for watching. I know this was a long video, but I wanted to cover every card. I didn't want to do multiple videos because I'm probably going to do Montaigne next.